The NCAA Women's Final Four tips off tonight in Tampa, with the men's last game starting tomorrow in San Antonio. William Brangham has a look now at the ways in which the games are shifting. William?
Now, this year's tournaments are unique in part because they feature a large number of players who previously played for a different school. That's thanks to big rule changes in the NCAA that let athletes easily move between schools. So, to help break all this down and explain the broader impact on college sports, we are joined by Jesse Doherty. He's a reporter at the Washington Post who covers the business of sports. Jesse, thank you so much for being here. Help us understand the big changes that are underway now with athletes able to enter what is called the so-called transfer portal, which allows them to toggle between schools. How is that impacting the game and more specifically this tournament?
Yeah, the reasons for it are really twofold. On one side, there's the transfer portal piece, and then very, very interconnected, there's name, image, and likeness money, which we more colloquially refer to as NIL. So, about 3, 4 years ago, the NCAA started to loosen transfer rules. At the same time, they allowed athletes to start monetizing their name, image, and likeness, effectively get paid, whether by brands or boosters. And what happened is that basically annually, athletes started switching schools because now the NCAA had far fewer restrictions on needing to sit out or needing to sort of spend time away from the game when you did switch programs. And at the same time, being able to make that NIL money, programs start bidding on these players, sort of like free agents in professional sports. So that's all culminated in an era of extreme player movement, which has affected both the men's and women's brackets. On the men's side, for example, more than half the players in this year's 68 team tournament field had played for a previous D1 team before this season. And it's just an astounding number. So that really, I mean, for the fans, it's hard to follow the arc of players and teams like you maybe once did because players are so often switching schools, going somewhere else, finding more playing time, finding a better fit, making more money in a lot of cases. And it's created a sort of transactional nature of the sport.
If it has created that somewhat, as some argue, a Wild West atmosphere, what is the rationale for this for the portal that allows this jumping back and forth?
Yeah, the rationale is that anyone can change jobs this frequently. I mean, you and I could change companies once a year. We probably wouldn't want to do that. But the reality here is that the market has decided that these athletes are worth a lot of money, and for decades they were not able to make that money. It was frankly suppressed by NCAA rules, and now seeing that this market has responded to say you're worth $400,000, $600,000, over a million every year. These athletes are never more valuable. They're never more, able to monetize on that talent than when they're available. So that sort of created this transfer portal. So the rationale is more of a free market argument. There's not really one that sort of I think is conducive to upping fan interest or necessarily promoting best sort of academic path through college. But in terms of just sort of how professional sports operate, in this case, it's about a free market as any. I mean, NFL, NBA, MLB players, they all need to stay on teams for multiple years, if not sometimes close to a decade in some cases. And these college players have really had free reign just to move as much as possible.
I mean, I've got to imagine if I were a coach of a team that this has got to be a complicated thing, knowing that somebody who I had trained and brought up and thought, okay, you're a sophomore now, you're going to be great your junior and senior years. Now that person could be gone. I mean, how are coaches responding to this?
Some prominent ones have retired and cited this as a reason, not the sole reason, but Tony Bennett at Virginia, Jay Wright at Villanova, Jim Larinaga at Miami this year, mid-season, just saying they can't quite get into this new era. They can't meet the demands that what you need to do on top of coaching. I mean, now you're sort of an around the clock fundraiser, negotiator, a GM in a lot of cases. So coaches are having trouble in some schools in instances of adapting. Others who are older, whether it's Rick Pitino, some others are adapting well and sort of taking to the new era and using a lot of the tools and new ways to roster build and sort of just leaning in, so to speak. So there's a range of reactions. I mean, there's some like Tom Izzo at Michigan State who didn't really use the transfer portal for this year's roster. And he had went all the way to the Elite Eight, one win from the Final Four. So there's not really one way to do this. There's thousands probably if you broke down all the different permutations to build a roster. But the coaching community certainly would like more structure. I don't think they prefer to have the transfer portal open during the tournament and spend this time of the year when they just finished up a whole season recruiting a whole new roster and worrying about retaining their players. I mean, it's certainly added a lot more layers to the process. And I think coaching in a lot of ways is not what these guys are used to or what they initially signed up for.
Right. In the last 30 seconds or so we have, are there efforts to regulate this? I know there's a big hearing next week. Can you just briefly describe what's going on there?
Yeah, starting this summer, schools will likely be able to directly pay athletes for the first time. To this point, it's really only been boosters and brands. So with that, there will come a salary cap if that does happen. A major legal settlement has to happen first, but that would provide some regulation, some spending guidelines. The NCAA hopes to limit booster spending in the future. It remains to be seen if that will all be successful, but there are certainly efforts underway to try to bring some regulation and structure to this industry.
All right, Jesse Doherty of the Washington Post, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.